The galaxy was old. It had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a cosmic ocean. Stars had been born, lived their lives, and died in brilliant explosions, while civilizations crawled across the darkness between them. And for 40,000 years, one power had ruled above all others. The Velkorath Dominion sat at the heart of the galaxy like a spider in its web. 17 ancient species had joined together long ago, united by a simple belief. They were the chosen ones. The universe belonged to them, and every younger race existed only to serve their needs. From their throne worlds at the galactic core, the Dominion watched the stars. They catalogued every new species that crawled out of their home planet. They measured them, judged them, and decided their fate. Most were deemed useful as workers or soldiers. Some were found to be worthless and were erased from existence. The Dominion called this process galactic maintenance. They had been doing it for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be challenged. Humanity was a latecomer to the cosmic stage. They had only left Earth 300 years ago, spreading to 12 small colony worlds on the galaxy's outer edge. The Dominion called this region the Fringe. It was a dismissive name for a dismissive place, far from the important center of galactic civilization. When Dominion scouts first encountered human ships 50 years ago, they were not impressed. Human bodies were fragile and weak. Human lives were short, barely a century at most. Human technology was primitive, centuries behind even the youngest Dominion members. The scouts filed their report and moved on. Humanity was designated as a tithe species, a term that carried a clear meaning. Humans would provide labor, resources, and tribute. In exchange, they would be allowed to continue existing. For 50 years, humanity obeyed. They paid their tributes in rare minerals and manufactured goods. They bowed their heads when Dominion ships passed through their space. They watched as their young people were taken to work in distant mines and factories. They swallowed their pride and survived. The Dominion took this as proof of their own superiority. Lesser races always submitted in the end. High Arbiter Jalmothrix was the supreme voice of the Dominion. He had held his position for over 3,000 years, guiding the coalition through countless small wars and routine extinctions. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that burned with cold intelligence. When he spoke, entire civilizations trembled. On the day that would change everything, Jalmothrix summoned the human ambassador to his throne world. The meeting took place in the Hall of Eternal Dominion, a chamber so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Holographic displays showed the 17 founding species in positions of glory, while conquered races knelt in submission at their feet. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone before the High Arbiter's towering form. She was a small woman, with gray hair and steady eyes. She had served as humanity's voice to the Dominion for 20 years, enduring insults and humiliations with quiet dignity. Today, she sensed something different in the air. Jalmothrix wasted no time with pleasantries. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. Humanity has been reviewed by the Genetic Council. Your species has been found lacking. You breed too quickly and consume too many resources. Your genetic potential has been assessed as stagnant. The Dominion requires correction. Ambassador Vasquez remained silent, her face showing nothing. The High Arbiter continued. You will surrender 7 of your 12 worlds for Dominion resettlement. Your population will be reduced by 60% through controlled sterilization programs. The remaining humans will undergo genetic modification to improve your usefulness. You have 1 galactic cycle to comply. This is approximately 3 of your Earth months. He paused, expecting the usual response. Tears, perhaps. Begging. Desperate negotiations for slightly better terms. He had seen it all before. Every tithe species reacted the same way when faced with the Dominion's will. Ambassador Vasquez looked up at the towering alien. Her expression did not change. Her voice did not waver. She spoke 2 words that had never been spoken in this hall before. We decline. The silence that followed was absolute. Jalmothrix stared at the small human woman as if she had suddenly grown a second head. Advisors and guards exchanged confused glances. Surely they had misheard. You decline? The High Arbiter's voice was soft with disbelief. We decline. Ambassador Vasquez repeated. Humanity rejects your ultimatum. We will not surrender our worlds. We will not reduce our population. We will not submit to your genetic programs. Your terms are unacceptable. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the stunned silence. Jal Mothrex found his voice. You understand what this means? No teeth species has ever refused us. We will send our fleets. We will burn your worlds. We will erase your kind from the galaxy. Ambassador Vasquez paused at the doorway. She looked back over her shoulder, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. It might have been fear. It might have been something else entirely. You may try, she said. Then she was gone. The High Arbiter laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound that filled the hall. His advisors joined in, their mockery rising to the vaulted ceiling. The idea of humans resisting the Dominion was absurd. It was like watching an insect threaten a mountain. But Jal Mothrex did not know what Ambassador Vasquez knew. He did not know what humanity had been doing for the past 50 years while they bowed and paid tribute. He did not know about the shipyards hidden in the void between stars, places where no sensor could reach. He did not know about the forges that had been burning day and night, building things that should not exist. Humanity had learned important lessons during their years of subjugation. They learned that the galaxy was not a place for the weak. They learned that kindness was seen as submission, and mercy was exploited. They learned that the only language the Dominion understood was power, and so they had built power. They had built it quietly, patiently, and on a scale that would make the Dominion's greatest achievements look like children's toys. Ambassador Vasquez returned to her ship and set course for Earth. As the stars streamed past her window, she allowed herself a small smile. The game had begun. The Dominion believed they were hunting prey. They did not realize they were walking into a trap that had been 50 years in the making. In the darkness between stars, humanity waited. Their hour was coming. The news spread across the Dominion like fire through dry grass. A tithe species had refused an ultimatum. It was unthinkable. It was absurd. It was almost funny. High Arbiter Jal Mothrex ordered the assembly of a purification fleet. This was a force designed for one purpose only. It would travel to human space, destroy their military, burn their colonies, and either enslave or exterminate the survivors. The Dominion had done this many times before. They had a system. They had experience. They had never failed. Fleetmaster Krith Valen was chosen to lead the mission. He was a legend among the Dominion's military commanders. His body was covered in scars from 100 battles. His mind was sharp and ruthless. He had personally overseen the extinction of 11 species during his long career. To him, humanity was just another job. 3,000 warships gathered at the staging point. They were beautiful and terrible, gleaming with weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. The largest was Krith Valen's flagship, the Eternal Judgment. It was 15 kilometers long, a mountain of metal and firepower. Nothing in human space could hope to challenge it. The fleet departed with great ceremony. News broadcasts across the galaxy covered the event like entertainment. Commentators joked about how quickly the human problem would be solved. Betting pools opened on how many days until humanity surrendered. The smart money said less than a week. Meanwhile, something strange was happening in human space. Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Luna. He was 67 years old, with white hair and a face lined by decades of hidden anger. His grandfather had died during the first Dominion compliance action, when human colonists who asked too many questions were publicly executed as an example. His father had spent his life paying tribute to the aliens who murdered his father. Marcus Chen had grown up with a fire in his heart that never went out. Now he watched the display screens showing the Dominion fleet's approach. 3,000 ships, enough firepower to glass every human world 10 times over. Any other species would have despaired. Chen smiled. Begin evacuation protocols, he ordered. Move all civilian populations to the deep shelters. I want the colonies looking empty by the time they arrive. Across the 12 human worlds, the plan went into action. Families gathered their essential belongings and moved underground. Cities fell silent. Lights went dark. To Dominion sensors sweeping human space, it looked like panic. It looked like surrender. Dominion intelligence officers reported their findings with satisfaction. Human military forces appeared to consist of fewer than 200 small warships. They were hiding behind their largest planet, probably hoping for a chance to negotiate. The prey was behaving exactly as expected. What the Dominion did not see were the Veil stations. There were hundreds of them, scattered throughout human space. They looked like simple communication relays, boring pieces of infrastructure that no one would look at twice. The Dominion had scanned them years ago and found nothing interesting. This was exactly what humanity wanted them to find. In truth, the Veil stations were something else entirely. They generated fields that bent space itself, creating pockets of hidden reality. Behind this invisible curtain, humanity had built their true fleet. For 50 years, every spare resource had been funneled into construction projects that officially did not exist. Workers who went to these hidden shipyards never spoke of what they saw. The secret was kept perfectly, because everyone understood what was at stake. Admiral Chen's daughter, Captain Sarah Chen, served aboard one of the hidden vessels. She was 34 years old, trained since childhood for a war that everyone hoped would come. Her ship was called the Righteous Fury, and it was just one of thousands waiting in the darkness. "Father," she said over a secure channel, "the fleet is ready. All ships report full combat status." "Good," Chen replied. "Remember what I told you. Wait for my signal, not a moment before." "I understand." The old admiral closed the channel and turned back to his screens. The Dominion fleet was entering the outer reaches of human space now. Fleet Master Krithvallen was broadcasting demands for immediate surrender, promising mercy if humans cooperated and total destruction if they resisted. Chen listened to the threats without expression. He had heard similar words his entire life. Pay tribute, submit, obey, know your place. The words had carved themselves into his soul like wounds that never healed. His aide approached nervously. "Sir, should we respond to their broadcasts?" "Not yet," Chen said. "Let them come deeper. Let them feel confident. Let them think they've already won." The Dominion fleet pushed forward. Colony after colony fell silent at their approach. No resistance materialized. Krithvallen reported to the High Arbiter that the operation was proceeding ahead of schedule. The humans were clearly too afraid to fight. Jal Mothrex received the news on his throne world with satisfaction. He had already selected which trophies he would take from human space. Perhaps he would keep some humans as personal servants. They could serve drinks at his parties while his guests laughed at them. But in the void between stars, something stirred. The hidden shipyards hummed with barely contained energy. Thousands of human warships waited in perfect formation, their crews ready. And behind them, hidden even from most of humanity, were 7 shapes so massive that they bent light around their edges. Admiral Chen watched the Dominion fleet approach Earth's solar system. They were almost in position now, almost where he wanted them. "All stations," he said quietly. "Prepare for activation. In 3 hours the veil falls." His voice carried the weight of 50 years of waiting, 50 years of humiliation, 50 years of building something that would shock the galaxy to its core. The storm was about to break, and the Dominion had no idea what was coming. Fleet Master Krithvallen sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Judgment and watched Earth grow larger on his screens. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green and white with clouds. Soon it would be burning. His tactical officers reported that human resistance remained minimal. The small human fleet had retreated behind their gas giants, probably hoping to hide. It was pathetic. In a few hours, his forces would sweep them aside like dust and begin the real work of purification. Then something strange happened. "Fleet Master," one of his sensor operators said, voice uncertain. "I'm detecting unusual gravitational readings." Krithvallen frowned. "Explain." "Our sensors are flickering. Something is interfering with space itself. I've never seen readings like this before." Before Krithvallen could respond, every screen on his bridge went dark for exactly 3 seconds. When they came back online, nothing looked the same. Admiral Marcus Chen's voice filled the communications channel. It came through on every frequency, including several that the Dominion believed were completely secure. The old human's face appeared on screens across the entire Dominion fleet. "For 50 years, Chen said, you taught us what the galaxy truly is. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that kindness is exploited. You taught us that the only thing you respect is power." He paused, and his eyes seemed to look directly at Krithvallen. "We learned, we adapted. Now we teach you something in return." Throughout human space, the Veil stations began to pulse with energy. The hidden fields that had concealed humanity's secrets for 5 decades started to collapse. Not because they were failing, because they had served their purpose. Krithvallen watched in confusion as space itself seemed to shimmer and tear. Where there had been empty void moments before, Structures began to appear. Massive structures, shipyards larger than anything the Dominion had ever built. Dozens of them, each one filled with ships. Sensor operator, Krith Valen said slowly. How many human vessels are you detecting? The operator's hands were shaking as she worked her controls. Her voice came out as a whisper. Fleet Master. I count over 12,000 warships. The bridge fell silent. 3,000 Dominion ships faced 12,000 human vessels. The math was simple and terrifying, but that was not the worst of it. There's something else, the sensor operator continued. Behind the gas giants. I'm reading. Fleet Master, this cannot be correct. My instruments must be malfunctioning. What do you see? 7 contacts, each one measuring approximately 200 kilometers in length. Krith Valen stood from his chair. 200 kilometers. His flagship, the pride of the Dominion fleet, was 15 kilometers long. The largest warship ever built by any Dominion species was 40 kilometers. What the operator was describing was impossible. That cannot be, he said. Nothing that size could exist. The mass alone would cause structural collapse. I am reading what I am reading, Fleet Master. Admiral Chen's broadcast continued. You came here expecting to find prey. You expected us to beg and die like all the others. But we are not like the others. We had 50 years to prepare, 50 years to build, 50 years to create something that would make you understand one simple truth. The 7 massive contacts began to move. They emerged from behind Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune, where they had been hidden in the gravity wells of the gas giants. As they came into view, every Dominion sensor screamed with impossible readings. They were ships, but calling them ships seemed wrong. They were moving mountains. They were artificial moons. They were weapons on a scale that defied understanding. Each one dwarfed everything else in the solar system. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy civilizations. We are not your prey, Admiral Chen finished. We are your consequence. Krith Valen stared at the 7 titans approaching his fleet. He had fought in more battles than he could count. He had destroyed 11 species. He had never once felt fear in combat. He felt it now. All ships, he ordered, voice cracking slightly. Prepare for emergency withdrawal. We need to report this to the High Arbiter. His communications officer turned pale. Fleet Master, our communication systems are being jammed. The humans are inside our networks. They've been inside our networks for years. We cannot contact anyone outside this system. The trap had been sprung. The prey had become the predator. Across the Dominion fleet, panic began to spread. Captains who had expected an easy victory found themselves facing annihilation. Some tried to run, pushing their engines to maximum power. The human ships moved to intercept them with casual precision. All Dominion vessels. Admiral Chen broadcast. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and lower your shields. You will be taken prisoner and treated according to the conventions of war. If you refuse, you will be destroyed. Fleet Master Krith Valen looked at his options. Fight against impossible odds, surrender and face humiliation, or try to run and be hunted down like animals. Some ships chose to fight. They opened fire on the nearest human vessels. The human fleet responded instantly. Dominion warships that had seemed invincible moments before exploded like fireworks. The 7 megaships had not even fired yet. They continued their slow approach, their very presence distorting space around them. As they powered up their primary weapons, something happened that Krith Valen would never forget. The void shuddered. It was not a metaphor. Space itself seemed to tremble. Stars flickered. Light bent in ways that should not have been possible. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, sensitive instruments detected a gravitational wave that originated from Earth's solar system. Scientists looked up in confusion. Something fundamental had shifted in the fabric of reality. Fleet Master Krith Valen, veteran of 11 extinctions, watched the impossible ships prepare to fire. He finally understood that everything he had believed about the universe was wrong. The galaxy was about to change forever, and he had a front-row seat to the beginning of the end. The 7 megaships moved through the darkness like gods walking among mortals. Each one had a name, chosen carefully by the humans who built them. Prometheus led the formation, serving as Admiral Chen's mobile command center. Behind it came Leviathan, Ragnarok, Eternal Defiance, Nemesis, Colossus, and Remember Earth. That last name was chosen by the families who had lost loved ones to Dominion cruelty over the past 50 years. It was a promise and a warning. Fleetmaster Krithvalan watched the giants approach and tried to understand what he was seeing. His tactical officers reported that the megaships were not entirely in normal space. They existed partially in another dimension, a place where the normal laws of physics did not apply. This was how they could exist at all. This was how 200 kilometers of metal and weapons could hold together without collapsing under its own gravity. Humanity had discovered something that the ancient Dominion species had missed. They had found a way to cheat reality itself. Target the lead ship, Krithvalan ordered desperately. All weapons, maximum power, fire everything. 3,000 Dominion warships unleashed their combined firepower at the Prometheus. Beams of energy and missiles by the thousands streaked through space toward the massive vessel. It was enough firepower to destroy a planet. It was enough firepower to crack a moon in half. The Prometheus did not even slow down. Energy shields that glowed with impossible light absorbed the attack. Missiles detonated harmlessly against barriers that should not have existed. The megaship continued its approach as if nothing had happened. Admiral Chen watched from his command center deep inside the Prometheus. Banks of screens showed him everything happening in the battle. His face remained calm, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly. "Return fire," he said quietly. "One shot. Let them see what they're dealing with." The Prometheus powered its main weapon. It was not a laser or a missile launcher. It was something entirely new. Something humanity had developed in the hidden shipyards, where the rules of physics were just suggestions. The weapon drew power from the dimensional boundary that allowed the megaship to exist. It compressed space itself into a beam of pure destruction. When it fired, reality screamed. The beam crossed the distance to the Dominion fleet in an instant. Where it passed, space twisted and tore. 400 Dominion warships were caught in its path. They did not explode. They did not burn. They simply stopped existing. One moment, 400 vessels crewed by tens of thousands of Dominion soldiers were there. The next moment, the universe had forgotten they ever existed. No wreckage, no debris, no bodies, nothing. Krithvalan watched 400 ships vanish from his tactical display. His mind refused to process what he had seen. This was not warfare. This was erasure. This was a power that could unmake reality itself. That was a warning shot. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channel. "I will say this once more. Surrender now, or we will destroy every ship in your fleet." Panic consumed the Dominion forces. Ships began to scatter in all directions, their crews desperate to escape. Some tried to jump to faster-than-light travel. But the human fleet had anticipated this. Interdiction fields locked down the entire solar system. No one was leaving. The human warships moved through the chaos with deadly precision. 12,000 vessels organized into perfect formations, cutting off escape routes and herding the Dominion ships into kill zones. They were not fighting with anger or hatred. They were fighting like professionals doing a job they had trained their entire lives for. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the Righteous Fury from its position near the center of the human formation. She watched a Dominion cruiser try to run past her squadron and gave the order to intercept. Her ship's weapons tore through the enemy's shields like they were made of paper. "This is for grandfather," she whispered as the cruiser broke apart. One by one, the Dominion ships surrendered or died. Some captains chose to fight to the end, preferring death to the shame of defeat. The megaships eliminated them without mercy. Others powered down their weapons and waited for capture. Within 3 hours, it was over. Of the 3,000 Dominion warships that had entered human space, fewer than 300 survived. Fleetmaster Krithvalan was among the survivors, his flagship crippled but intact. He was brought aboard the Prometheus as a prisoner, walking through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. Admiral Chen met him in person. The old human looked tired, not triumphant. There was no celebration in his eyes, only the weight of what had been done. "Your fleet is destroyed," Chen said. "You will return to the Dominion with your surviving ships and deliver a message." Krithvalan struggled to find his voice. In his long life, he had never imagined standing as a defeated prisoner before a species he had been sent to exterminate. "What message?" "Tell your High Arbiter that humanity is no longer a tithe species. Tell him that the Fringe remembers every insult, every death, every humiliation we suffered under your rule. Tell him that if the Dominion ever threatens human space again, We will not stop at defending ourselves. We will come to your throne worlds. We will show you what real extinction looks like." The fleet master looked at the old human admiral. For 40,000 years, the Dominion had believed they were the masters of the galaxy. In a single day, a species they had dismissed as primitive and weak had shattered that belief forever. "Why?" Krithvalan asked. "Why did you wait so long? You could have revealed your strength years ago." Admiral Chen's eyes grew distant. "Because we needed you to come to us. We needed the galaxy to see this. We needed everyone to know that the Dominion can be beaten. You weren't just our enemies, Fleet Master. You were our proof." The surviving Dominion ships were repaired enough to travel and sent home. They carried their wounded, their shame, and the most important message in galactic history. The old order was ending. Something new was beginning. News of the Dominion's defeat traveled faster than any ship could carry it. Word passed from trader to smuggler to spy, spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. On 100 different worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives under Dominion rule heard the impossible news. The Masters had been defeated. The tithe species had risen. Everything was changing. High Arbiter Jalmothrax received Fleet Master Krithvalan's report in his throne room. He listened in silence as the broken commander described the battle. The hidden fleet, the impossible megaships, the weapon that erased ships from existence. When Krithvalan finished, the High Arbiter sat motionless for a long time. Then he began to scream. His rage echoed through the halls of power. He demanded the immediate mobilization of every Dominion military asset. He wanted every ship, every soldier, every weapon brought to bear against humanity. He wanted the human worlds burned to ash, and the survivors scattered to the darkest corners of the galaxy. But his advisors hesitated. They had seen the recordings from the battle. They had watched 400 ships vanish in an instant. If humanity had destroyed 3,000 vessels so easily, what would happen if the Dominion sent more? What if the humans stopped being merciful? For the first time in 40,000 years, the Dominion's leadership was afraid. On Earth, Ambassador Elena Vasquez prepared for the most important speech of her life. She would address the Dominion Council directly, speaking not as a supplicant but as an equal. The thought still seemed strange to her. For 20 years, she had bowed and scraped before these beings. Now she would stand before them with the power of 7 megaships behind her. The transmission was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as the small human woman appeared before the Dominion Council's holographic assembly. She did not bow. She did not lower her eyes. She looked directly at High Arbiter Jalmothrax and spoke with perfect calm. "The tithe species system is over," she said. "From this moment forward, no species will be forced to pay tribute. No species will be enslaved. No species will be exterminated for the convenience of others." The council erupted in outrage. Representatives of the 17 founding species shouted and threatened. Jalmothrax's eyes burned with barely controlled fury. Ambassador Vasquez waited for the noise to die down. Then she continued, "Humanity offers the Dominion a choice. You can accept these terms and join a new galactic accord based on mutual respect and cooperation. Or you can refuse. And we will dismantle your empire piece by piece until there is nothing left to refuse with." She smiled slightly. "You have 60 days to decide. Use them wisely." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, beings who had never dared to hope began to believe that change was possible. Admiral Marcus Chen did not celebrate the victory. He walked the corridors of the Prometheus alone, thinking about what humanity had become. They had built weapons capable of ending civilizations. They had killed tens of thousands of Dominion soldiers in a single day. They had become exactly the kind of power they had sworn to resist. His daughter found him standing at a viewport, staring at the stars. "Father," Sarah said gently, "you should rest. The war is over." "The war is never over," Chen replied. "It just changes form. Today we defeated a bully. Tomorrow we have to decide what kind of power we want to be." "What do you mean?" The old admiral turned to face her. "The Dominion ruled through fear and cruelty for 40,000 years. Now we have the power to do the same. We could become the new masters, forcing other species to bow to us the way we bowed to them. We could revenge ourselves on every race that looked down on us. But we won't do that," Sarah said firmly. "No, we won't. But the temptation will always be there. Power like this changes people. It changed the Dominion. We have to make sure it doesn't change us. In the months that followed, humanity worked to build something new. Representatives from over 60 species gathered on the human colony world of New Geneva. Most of them were from tithe species, who had suffered under Dominion rule for generations. They came with hope in their hearts and uncertainty in their minds. The negotiations were difficult. Trust had to be built from nothing. Old wounds had to be addressed. But slowly, painfully, a new document took shape. They called it the Galactic Sovereignty Accord. Its core principle was simple. No species, regardless of age or power, had the right to subjugate another. The signing ceremony took place on a perfect spring day. 63 species added their marks to the document, pledging to build a galaxy based on cooperation rather than domination. The Dominion's seat at the table sat empty. They had refused to attend. High Arbiter Jal Mothrex watched the ceremony from his throne world. His empire was not destroyed, but it was diminished. Species that had once bowed to the Dominion now looked elsewhere for protection. The tribute payments had stopped. The flow of slave labor had ended. For the first time in 40,000 years, the Dominion was not the center of the galaxy. He stood at his viewport and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human megaships waited. He had seen the recordings of what their weapons could do. He understood now what his ancestors never learned. The universe was not a place where the strong simply took from the weak forever. Eventually, the weak became strong. Eventually, the bullied became dangerous. Eventually, the void created monsters to punish those who believed themselves gods. On the Prometheus, Admiral Chen prepared to return home. The great ship had become a symbol of human power, but he hoped it would never need to fire its weapons again. He had spent his whole life preparing for war. Now he wanted to learn how to prepare for peace. His final order before leaving the command center was simple. He told his crew to keep the ship ready, its weapons maintained, its systems updated, not because he wanted to use them, but because he understood an important truth. Peace was not something that happened by accident. Peace had to be defended. Peace had to be earned. And sometimes, peace required the threat of overwhelming force to make it possible. The Prometheus settled into a quiet orbit around Earth, its massive form visible from the surface on clear nights. Children looked up and pointed at the moving star. Their parents told them stories about the day humanity stopped being prey and became something else. The galaxy was different now. Not perfect, not safe, but different. The old order had fallen. The new order was still being written, and in the dark between stars, humanity watched over it all, ready to defend what they had built. They had learned their lessons well. They had learned that freedom must be fought for. They had learned that the universe respects strength, and they had learned that sometimes, the only way to end tyranny is to become strong enough to tear it down. The void no longer shuddered. It waited, watching to see what would come next.